For 6 years, I have been the target of the unrelenting Trump attack machine. I'm also here today to correct how the MAGA right has portrayed me for their political purposes. Republicans do not want an open process where Americans can see their tactics, expose their baseless inquiry, or hear what I have to say.
It's all MAGA, it's all Republicans. A defiant Hunter Biden tells us. Well, that was Hunter Biden making his case outside the Capitol yesterday. But if he's so willing to talk, why did he defy a congressional subpoena and risk facing being held in contempt of Congress? And we now know that the president knew Hunter was going to just shrug off a subpoena.
If I called my dad and said, I am about to violate a congressional subpoena, he'd probably say, son, you shouldn't do that. Was there any attempt by President Biden to talk Hunter out of it today?
The president was familiar with what Hunter was going to say today.
Why doesn't President Biden just pardon him?
President, I've been very clear. The president's not going to pardon his son.
But even if Hunter is held in contempt, there's no telling if his father's Justice Department, an independent DOJ, they say, will prosecute the first son, leading the Trump family, who were also investigated relentlessly for years, to call out the double standard in the Department of Justice.
Don was called in 5 times. He testified for 40 hours. I'm probably the most subpoenaed person in this country, right? At the ripe age of 39 years old, I've been probably subpoenaed more times than any other person in this country by these absolute animals. Yet, I've never had a speeding ticket. I've never broken the law. It's absolutely infuriating. If that was me who went to Capitol Hill and did a press conference on literally the front stairs about 20 feet away from the committee I was supposed to appear in, I would be in shackles before I left Washington, D.C.
Any advice for Hunter before we leave?
Go testify.
Go testify.
Do what they made us do. Go testify.
There you go.
Well, Emily, I want to flash back to President Biden, who had very definite thoughts about people who defied subpoenas in the Trump orbit.
What's your message to people who defy congressional subpoenas on the January 6th committee?
I hope that the committee goes after them and holds them accountable.
Should they be prosecuted by the Justice
I do,
Department?
yes.
And yet he was aware of Hunter's decision.
Totally. And first of all, I love that view of his, by the way, is actually pretty severe, because you can hold someone in civil contempt or inherent, which is sort of worse. But so the fact that he goes straight to the criminal prosecution, great, Biden. Where's that thought now for your son? It's so exhausting to so many millions of Americans who know what it's like to receive a subpoena, who know what it's like to open the door and have the IRS on your doorstep. They have no dad to absolve them. They have no gaggle of reporters to listen to them. It is infuriating that this self-named victim is blaming a prior president and a prior administration on consequences to his behavior. And at the potential impact for Americans and national security, and he has the gall to stand there and say it's a Republican witch hunt, woe is me. He's been nothing but trouble from the start, and I applaud the fact that maybe finally we might see an iota of accountability. But when you contrast not only the president's comments, but also the way that this DOJ is handling it, Peter Navarro was arrested at an airport. He was denied food and water and put in shackles, to which the judge said, why was he not given an option to self-surrender? Why was he essentially tied up? What is the purpose? And when you think that someone who is put in leg restraints, is there some type of inherent then plausibility or link that he might become violent? And if so, then should Hunter Biden be convicted of contempt in some way? Where will his leg irons be? Again, he's a Biden, so I'm sure he'll just be enjoying more coke and hookers.
Right. The FBI denied it, but, that was the claim. So look at this, Kennedy. Politico, this is pretty brazen. This is the word that comes to mind. Hunter Biden pulled off his surprise appearance at the Capitol on Wednesday morning with the help of Eric Swalwell. Gosh. The Democratic lawmaker confirmed to Politico he reserved the Senate swamp. That was the parking spot, or the spot that he used. One person who knew about the sudden appearance said that the president himself knew about it. Brazen is the word that just comes to mind here.
It's pretty incredible considering some of the problematic issues that have been raised with Eric Swalwell and his close proximity to an alleged Chinese spy. So, obviously Eric Swalwell and Hunter Biden were both enjoying the riches of Chinese communist money and proximity. So it's very rich that was his human shield. But I don't have a lot of time for Hunter Biden in his excuses. I think he needs to answer some of these very serious questions, particularly for people who are on the fence and people within the Democrat Party who are very skeptical of not only his behavior, but his dad's. And Shannon cited the polling that we have a little bit earlier in the show. 70% of people think that something illegal or immoral happened here. So Hunter Biden, instead of making excuses and skirting accountability, he needs to answer very specific questions.
Yes, someone else who needs to answer questions is the White House press secretary. Let's see how she did yesterday. This is Karine Jean-Pierre.
The president spent a lot of time in Congress, been around Washington a while. Does he believe that congressional subpoenas are something that individual citizens can ignore?
I'm just not going to speak to that. Just not.
He's a former senator. He's issued subpoenas in his career. Does he believe that subpoenas have to be complied with?
I'm just going to have you speak to the White House counsel on this. I'm just not going to speak to that.
Now, she hasn't wanted to speak to it throughout the entirety of the year. We put it together. You watch.
Going to get into, the specifics of any of the oversight here. I would refer you to him and the DOJ. Just not going to comment from here. I just don't have anything else to share. I will refer you to the White House counsel. The president was never in business with his son. I just don't have anything else to add. I've been asked this question multiple times. Nothing has changed. I don't have anything to add. I'm not going to get involved in this. That is a question for Hunter Biden's representative. I'm not going to get into it from here. We're going to move on. Republicans continue to double down on a baseless smear campaign against the president and his family. I would have to refer you to my colleagues over at the White House counsel's office. Folks,
can you explain why the president interacted with so many of his son's foreign business associates? More than half of voters told CNN they believe the president was involved and he lied. You can't have a response to that, Karine?
Now, Ian Sams has been out there, Shannon, White House counsel. He was out on 2 television shows today, at least. That's what I saw. But the White House press secretary will need to answer questions during an impeachment inquiry.
Yeah, they will. And this question about whether or not any of us should show up for a subpoena should be a simple one, especially for the head of the executive branch. I like to point to, because we talk about the Steve Bannon and the Peter Navarro. I mean, jail time for Steve Bannon. Peter is now waiting to be sentenced as well. Matthew Graves, who's the U.S. attorney in Washington, because if there is contempt, then he's going to decide whether there's actual prosecution, said this about subpoenaing Steve Bannon. He said it wasn't an invitation that could be rejected or ignored. He had an obligation to appear before the House committee who had subpoenaed him. So that sounds like a pretty clear statement. If Hunter ends up with these contempt charges, then will the U.S. Attorney's Office do anything about it in D.C.?
Great question, Todd.
I may be the 4th best lawyer on this couch right now, but you don't need to be a lawyer to understand a subpoena. It is not an evite where you get to check yes, no, maybe, or suggest a different time and place. It's a subpoena. You need to be there. Do not let Hunter Biden's theatrics distract from that. That's the key takeaway. The media will play up this. We need to be laser focused on understanding what a subpoena is and is not.
Yep, got to show up, but we'll see if there are consequences to not showing up.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.